BBC Radio Sheffield, that's Diana Ross and Chain Reaction. Good afternoon from Howie, 8 minutes past 4. Now, I mentioned the story yesterday about the government's plans to tackle air pollution by banning the sale of diesel and petrol cars by 2040. And Michael Gove's suggestion that drivers could be charged for using some of the most polluted roads, like the X630, which goes from Sheffield to Rotherham, and the A57 in Sheffield itself. Now, the government set aside £255 billion to help local authorities come up with plans in the next 8 months to tackle nitrogen dioxide emissions. Sheffield Council's been quite scathing about this, so we've got somebody in to explain why. Cllr Jack Scott is in charge of transport and sustainability for the council. Good afternoon to you, Jack.
Hi, Howie.
So why did you describe the government's plans then as woefully inadequate?
Well, because we're really disappointed with what the government's come up with. They've had years to work on this. They've only put it out because a court ordered them to and said they were breaking the law. And we've read the document and there's nothing in it of any real consequence. The money is all smoke and mirrors money. It's not like it's new money for councils. And basically, the government is passing the buck rather than having a coherent, properly funded, properly led national plan, which is what we really need. We've got this kind of piecemeal approach which forces councils to do a whole range of things without any money to make that happen, really. Remember, of course, the government is taking a lot of money from us at the same time as they're telling us to sort this problem out. We need national leadership. We need some national action.
So what do you want in it then?
So I'm glad you asked. I'd love a diesel scrappage scheme. That's what I want to see. So for really old diesel engines that are causing some of the biggest pollutions, I'd love to see a diesel scrappage scheme. I want to see public transport investment. In London, they get £8 for every £1 in public transport that we get in Sheffield. That's completely unfair. We need to fix that as well. And then we can encourage people perhaps to leave cars, especially diesel cars, and start using public transport. We want to see the electrification of Midland Main Line. And I know you covered this last week when the government cancelled that would have meant that the worst diesel trains that we have in Sheffield wouldn't be on our tracks at all, and that would have a big impact on air quality and be better for businesses and for our economy. And of course the government scrapped that yesterday. I could go on. There are a large number of things that we want to see, and none of that's happening.
Is the public transport up to it? I mean, you're saying getting people onto public transport, it's not up to it, is it?
Well, some of it is. Some of the public transport in Sheffield is really good. The super tram is fantastic, isn't it? I think most people would agree that it's really quite good. Some of our buses, the really popular routes, I think are really good, and we know that on some of those usage is going up, and we've made it easier for people to get tickets that aren't as confusing and so on. But on others, you're absolutely right. The cuts that we've had from the government have meant that we've had to cut back on buses, that the PTE who run this for us have had to cut back on a whole range of buses, and that's one of the things that's missing from here. There's hardly any discussion at all about public transport in this document, hardly anything about taxes, hardly anything about the government's own fleet, like ambulances and cars that the government uses to move different things around. So we're really disappointed. We think the government should have shown some proper leadership, and instead of being, visionary and having a good plan for the future, they're just being really weak and wobbly on this.
8 months to come up with a plan. What's going to be in it?
Our plan's going to be going to Cabinet, I hope, in October, possibly November, because it's important that we consult with people and get all the ideas that we can, but we're going to be working much faster than that 8 months. We're going to have a range of things in there. I want to look at air quality champions, so equipping members of the public with the skills and the information they need to kind of champion this issue and advocate for cleaner air. I want us to look at how we improve our bus fleet. Some of our buses are really good, but some of them are still a bit old and a bit, kind of chugging along and so on, and we need to do better on that, and that should be a big part of the plan. And we're going to look at some of our kind of hot spots as well, such as the Parkway, such as the A630 too.
Is that radical enough?
Well, no, I don't think it is. I think if it was up to me, I don't run the government, unfortunately, but if I did, we'd be doing a whole range of other things that I talked about. Well, like I said earlier, so we should have a national diesel scrappage scheme. Right. The council can't do that. There's no way that we could do that, and we haven't got the powers or the money to do that properly, and it needs to be led nationally, and that's where the big holes are. So unfortunately, it falls to us to do what we can to improve the problem, despite the lack of government action, whereas actually we'd much rather be working with a good government that got the seriousness of this issue and prioritised real investment to make it work.
One thing you did mention is that the trams. Wouldn't you want to expand the tram network?
Absolutely. So that's absolutely something that we want to do. We think our tram network now, believe it or not, is 20 years old, because time flies when you're having fun. Actually, our tram network hasn't been expanded, other than to Rotherham with the tram train connection, which is going to be really good in a couple of years. We haven't expanded it. We need to look really carefully at what that means, because Sheffield's shifted a lot in 20 years compared to the growth of our universities, for example, the growth of certain parts of our city. actually expanding the tram network could be a really key part of how we encourage people and make it as easy as possible for people to leave their cars at home. Similarly, we want to make this the best city in the country to walk around or to cycle.
I mean,
we've got a long way to go.
The Boris Bike Scheme, which happened in London, didn't it?
Absolutely.
Something like that round here.
Yes, certainly. We've already seen the University of Sheffield trialling that. That's not just for their students, that's for everybody. Uptake on that hasn't been what we wanted necessarily, and I think that's part of getting more people used to cycling is actually how we make people sure and convinced that it's safe to do. I cycle at least once or twice a week. I don't do it every day. I'm nowhere near fit enough to do that, but I do it when I can, and I've never regretted doing it when I bike in. Those sorts of things, there's not one magic silver bullet for this. We need a whole range of actions from government, which we haven't got, and that means the council needs to take some really robust action, and I'm absolutely determined that that's what we're going to do. And
electric cars, of course, that was the big announcement, wasn't it, yesterday? Electric cars, do you use electric vans on the council?
We have got some electric vans, and Amy and Viola use some gas vehicles as well, which don't pollute anything like as much as diesel or petrol vans, which is great. We can always do more. We can go further and faster. There's about 50 charging points across Sheffield now. There's actually more charging points than petrol stations now. We're one of the first cities to be in that situation, which is great, isn't it? I think the government saying, we're going to ban diesel and petrol vehicles is a bit like banning VCRs or something. No one has them really these days. And I think by 2040, no one will be having diesel or petrol cars anyway. So it's quite a headline-grabbing initiative, isn't it? But I don't think it'll actually have any real impact, because I think by 2035, I'd be amazed if anyone's still buying petrol or diesel cars. And we've already seen both Volkswagen and BMW say they won't be building any from 2022. So technology is moving forward here anyway, and actually the government could have made that happen so much more effectively, and I think they've really let the people of Sheffield down on this.
50 charging points in the city, are they used?
Yes, some of them are, certainly. So there, for example, in the new IKEA that's just being built, which is fantastic, we insisted as a council, as part of the planning development for that charging points were included, and we've done that on other places too. So the Spittal Hill, Tesco, for example, and also some of our own council car parks as well now have, as well as free parking for green cars, electric vehicles, we also have free charging for them as well. And when you take out the cost of petrol of running a car, it drops dramatically, doesn't it? Because, of course, electric cars also have very cheap tax on them as well. So actually the cost of running electric cars is dropping all the time, and that's only going to go even further down.
Would you be able to do more if you had a city region devolution bill in place?
Yeah, quite possibly. I think that we've always said that transport is one of the things that it makes sense to do not just at a city level. And it's quite possible that if we had a different type of devolution, or if we can secure agreement across South Yorkshire now, then absolutely that's something we can look at. And Sheffield will always seize with fingers, hands and toes every opportunity that comes from the government to make our city the greenest, best city in the country.
Jack, thanks for coming in. That's Councillor Jack Scott, then in charge of transport and sustainability for Sheffield City Council.